Las Vegas once glittered with the promise of endless nights and life-altering luck. A neon-soaked dream of instant fortune. But in the harsh light of 2025, that iconic glow has turned into a cold, mocking phantom of its former glory. The legendary Strip, once a pulsing artery of global tourism, is now a ghost town, echoing with an unnerving silence. Casino doors are slamming shut for good. A staggering 4,300 jobs have evaporated in a single month, and the loyal workforce that built this city is being brutally cast out onto the streets. Countless souls are now forced into makeshift tent cities, a desperate existence just a stone's throw from the silent, multi-million-dollar roulette tables that once promised them everything. America's fabled playground has devolved into a chilling, cautionary tale of shattered promises and catastrophic economic collapse. Lurking behind the gaudy, flickering billboards is a death spiral, dragging everyone and everything down with it. From the tourists who fled to the business owners who lost it all, and most tragically, the working class families who are now fighting for the barest scraps of survival. This city, once forged from dreams, is now systematically crushing them before our very eyes. Are we just witnessing the fall of Vegas? Or is this a terrifying preview of America's own unraveling? Tonight, we venture into the deepening shadows of Sin City to expose how hollowed-out casinos, catastrophic layoffs, and an explosive homeless crisis are not just destroying Las Vegas, but sounding an alarm for the entire nation. For generations, tourism was the very lifeblood of Las Vegas, its relentlessly beating heart. It pumped billions upon billions of dollars through its veins of casinos, hotels, and restaurants. But in 2025, that heart is suffering a catastrophic failure. Official data from Harry Reid International Airport reveals a horrifying truth. In a mere 2-month span, nearly 1 million flights to Vegas were abruptly canceled. This isn't just about ruined holidays. It's a deafening siren signaling the complete collapse of an entire economic model built on the fantasy of perpetual tourism. What's even more terrifying is the exodus of Canadian visitors, a staggering drop of nearly 20%, a devastating blow considering they once made up a full 1/5 of the city's international lifeblood. The reasons for this freefall are a relentless cascade of disasters. Suffocating visa restrictions and unpredictable border tariffs are just the first dominoes to topple. Add to that the relentless surge in airfare, and suddenly, America's playground feels more like a fortress. But the most cynical betrayal, the final twist of the knife, comes from within Vegas itself. Visitors are crying out, utterly bled dry by a predatory gauntlet of hidden costs, outrageous resort fees, extortionate parking charges, and scandalously overpriced meals. It's a nickel and dime assault on everything from a bottle of water to a show ticket. The city that once promised affordable luxury has revealed its true face, a cynical trap engineered to wring every last cent from its guests. Pouring gasoline on this raging fire is the arrogant strategy of casino CEOs who have callously abandoned the masses to go whale hunting, chasing only the ultra-rich. They're obsessed with the top 20% of clientele who deliver 80% of the profits, and in their greed, they have spit in the face of the middle-class visitors who actually built this city's legend. Remember the families from the heartland, the raucous bachelor parties, the everyday people who flocked here for cheap buffets and the thrill of a few loose slots? They've been told in no uncertain terms that they are no longer welcome in a city that now bows only to billionaires. The blowback was immediate and brutal. In a desperate panic, hotels are now slashing rates by a jaw-dropping 25 to 50%. They're even ditching the universally despised resort fees they swore they'd never abandon. But it's a pathetic, desperate gesture that has done almost nothing to stop the bleeding. The airplanes are still empty. The iconic hotel towers stand as dark, silent monoliths. And the casino floors, once electric with energy, are now cavernous halls of eerie, deafening silence. People might tolerate high prices elsewhere, but they will never forgive being treated like fools. And once that trust is shattered, it's gone forever. Herein lies the tragedy. The tourists have other choices. They can escape to Los Angeles, Miami, Mexico, even Dubai. But Las Vegas is trapped. it cannot run. Its entire existence is shackled to the very industry it betrayed. And as that lifeblood drains away, there is absolutely nothing to take its place. The self-proclaimed entertainment capital of the world is now learning a lesson written in economic ruin. Because when you kill the dream for the customer, the entire grotesque machine grinds to a violent, shuddering halt. And once the tourists vanished, that chilling silence crept from the casino floors into the break rooms and locker areas, infecting the very soul of the city's workforce. 4,300 jobs extinguished in a single month. These are not just statistics on a corporate spreadsheet. These are real human lives, shattered, rent payments defaulted, families thrown into agonizing choices between food on the table and keeping the lights on. For thousands of loyal workers, the job that was their piece of the American dream, their symbol of stability, has become the one cruel gamble they were destined to lose. The very people who dedicated years of their lives serving drinks, scrubbing hotel rooms, dealing cards, are now trapped in a cruel limbo, tethered to their phones, praying for phantom shifts that almost never materialize. For many, entire weeks crawl by in silence, their paychecks evaporating into nothingness, reducing the simple act of buying food to an unthinkable luxury. And for the few who are called in, the nightmare continues. The vital tip income they depended on has plummeted by a staggering 30 to 50%, a direct result of empty halls and tightened wallets. One cocktail server laid bare the brutal reality with chilling honesty. "The bills just keep coming," she said, "and I genuinely don't know how I'm going to feed my family." No, this corporate demolition has struck hardest at the very heart of local communities, places that were more than just casinos. Take the Poker Palace, a North Las Vegas institution since 1974. Its doors were recently slammed shut forever, extinguishing more than 120 jobs and erasing decades of shared history in a single, cold-hearted move. For the people who worked there, this wasn't just the loss of a paycheck. It was a piece of their very identity, viciously torn away by a cold, sterile press release announcing the property had been absorbed by the faceless entity known as Truckhucky Gaming LLC. And while this corporate restructuring insulates the executives and investors from any real harm, the very people who ran the tables and cooked the meals were callously discarded, left with nothing but termination papers. This sickening chasm between corporate survival and the complete collapse of the workforce has become the defining, ugly truth of Las Vegas's new reality, where CEOs shamelessly boast of saving billions of dollars through ruthless restructuring. They use bloodless terms like consolidation and automation, but make no mistake, those savings are paid for by the suffering of the very people whose sweat and dedication made the strip sparkle in the first place. To the tourists, the city is a glittering facade of neon brilliance. But for those trapped inside, the lights have gone out, and the shockwaves of this disaster are now tearing through every corner of their lives. Every single job lost isn't just a vanished paycheck. It's a family thrown into absolute crisis. It's the desperate recalculation of utility bills, the brutal slashing of grocery lists, and the terrifying reality of missed mortgage payments. People have been forced to surrender their financed cars overnight, watching symbols of hard-won stability transform into humiliating, repossessed burdens. Others are now forced to ration meals, stretching a single week's worth of food into 2, with parents routinely going hungry just so their children can eat. For these service workers, the despair is poisoned by the bitter knowledge that they are the ones who built this city's global reputation. They were the lifeblood, the ones keeping the drinks flowing at 3 in the morning. They were the ones who turned rooms into immaculate sanctuaries before a single guest arrived, who infused the strip with energy even as the desert outside baked in the brutal 115-degree heat. And now those same dedicated workers are being treated as expendable, dismissed as just another line item to be slashed in the relentless, soulless drive to protect corporate profits. The so-called American dream, once plastered on billboards as a prize you could win with a lucky hand, has been exposed as a twisted, cruel paradox. The more money the corporations hoard, the less the ordinary people who built this city have to survive on. Here in Las Vegas, the winners and losers are no longer determined by the spin of a roulette wheel. They're decided in insulated boardrooms, where comfortable executives sign off on decisions that push the very workers who carried this city's weight ever closer to the abyss of homelessness. And for thousands of families, that abyss is no longer a distant threat. It is the terrifying next chapter in this unfolding nightmare. If the mass job losses were the first crack in Las Vegas's gilded facade, then the explosion in homelessness is the entire structure collapsing, its tragic debris spilling out onto the Strip for the whole world to see. The official story, according to the Southern Nevada Homeless Continuum of Care, is that as of early 2025, Clark County had nearly 8,000 homeless individuals. But anyone with eyes to see knows that number is a grotesque, insulting understatement. Beyond those sanitized statistics are the hidden armies of the displaced, seeking refuge in broken-down cars, seeking shelter in storm drains, and sleeping in the shadows of highway overpasses. These are the very people who once worked in the casinos that now hire security to chase them from their doorsteps. The irony is as brutal as it is obscene. In a city boasting over 150,000 hotel rooms, thousands of its own people cannot find a single safe place to sleep. Entire families, whose parents once cleaned those very rooms or served guests in the grand buffets, are now huddled together in desperate, makeshift camps. Their shelters, cobbled together from wooden pallets, tarps, and scrap metal, offer little protection as they bake under the relentless, unforgiving 115-degree desert sun. Mere steps away from the obscene opulence of multi-million-dollar roulette tables and lavish luxury suites, lines of desperate tents now scar the sidewalks, transforming the entertainment capital of the world into a glaring monument to its own hypocrisy. It's a city split in two, blinding neon light on one side, raw human despair on the other. And behind the cold statistics are stories so devastating they could break your heart. Consider the single mother who once earned her living cleaning those pristine hotel rooms, now forced to raise her children in a flimsy tent just off Tropicana Avenue, in the shadow of the very industry that discarded her. The very man who once shuttled tourists from the airport is now condemned to sleep in his van, a victim of a lost job and crushing payments. A decorated veteran who put his faith in a country that promised never to abandon him now lies awake wondering if he'll survive another night on the merciless Strip. Let's be brutally clear. These are not faceless drifters. They are the discarded backbone of Las Vegas, the very souls who once powered this glittering machine, now cast aside like trash. The undeniable visibility of this catastrophe is shattering the city's manufactured image in real time. On platforms like TripAdvisor and Yelp, glowing reviews are being buried under an avalanche of complaints about aggressive panhandling, the sickening stench of human waste, and vicious brawls erupting over a patch of concrete where tourists once snapped cheerful photos. One traveler's verdict was chillingly blunt. I couldn't endure my vacation. The atmosphere was pure chaos. The Strip felt dangerously unsafe, and I fled the city early. It's so dire that even mega resorts like the Flamingo and the Luxor are now fortresses, forced to inflate their security budgets and issue stark warnings advising their own guests not to dare venture outside after 10 p.m. For small business owners, this crisis isn't a threat, it's an execution. Owners of restaurants and souvenir shops on the Strip report their revenues have been slashed by more than half since the grim shadow of tent camps fell upon their doorsteps. One shopkeeper confessed with a terrifying honesty, customers see the tents and they just keep walking. If this continues, it's only a matter of time before I'm in one of those tents myself. This is a merciless death spiral. More desperate people on the streets drives away the very tourists this city needs to survive. Fewer tourists means bleeding businesses, and those businesses lay off more employees, who are then tragically forced to join the ranks of the homeless. This scourge is no longer contained to the forgotten corners of downtown. It is spreading like a raging inferno across the most visible and lucrative stretch of real estate in America. The Strip, once peddled as an oasis of luxury and escape, now serves as the ghastly stage for one of the nation's most explosive humanitarian crises. In just 3 years, homelessness has surged by a catastrophic 56%, and the city's own tourism managers have been forced to admit the problem is completely out of control. This is not just an eyesore, it's a gaping wound, a vortex that threatens to devour the entire economic foundation of Las Vegas. Because when tourists can no longer separate the glittering fantasy from the grim reality, when the neon dream is shattered by the image of families shivering in tents, the entire illusion collapses. And in a city built entirely on illusion, once that shattering begins, it is almost impossible to stop. The Strip's lights still burn, but in their deepening shadows, an army of forgotten workers is fighting a desperate battle for survival. What began as empty casinos and lost paychecks has now erupted onto the sidewalks as a full-blown homeless crisis at the very heart of America's playground. And this next chapter is a terrifying warning. When despair is allowed to fester unchecked, the danger does not stay hidden in the shadows. It crawls into the light and begins to violently reshape the very streets themselves. As the number of homeless camps swelled across Las Vegas, another, more sinister shadow began to stretch over the city: crime. According to the FBI's own Uniform Crime Reporting Program, Nevada was rocked by a staggering 7% increase in serious violent crimes in 2023 alone, a figure that analysts directly and unequivocally connect to the city's collapsing tourism economy and the sheer desperation of those left behind. The Strip was once a place where tourists felt untouchable, insulated by a dazzling shield of lights, crowds, and cameras. Now, those same avenues that once promised safety and wonder feel more like unpoliced, lawless battlegrounds. The link is undeniable. When you strip workers of their jobs, their homes, and their hope, the risk of petty theft, violent conflict, and street-level anarchy absolutely skyrockets. Residents of North Las Vegas admit they no longer feel safe walking their own streets after dark. One small shop owner explained that he now locks his doors hours earlier than before, terrified of the brawls constantly breaking out nearby. The lively evening buzz of neighborhood diners and grocery stores has been choked out by a heavy, anxious silence, broken only by the shriek of a distant siren or a shouting match spilling from the darkened sidewalks. The impact on tourism has been as immediate as it has been brutal. Travel sites are now littered with horrified reviews from shaken visitors who describe being relentlessly harassed on the Strip, witnessing fistfights near bus stops, or feeling profoundly unsafe even in the most crowded areas. Tourists aren't just avoiding a few dangerous corners anymore, they are avoiding the city altogether. And for a place like Las Vegas, where perception is everything, this reputational damage may be infinitely more destructive than the economic collapse itself. Social scientists have issued a chilling warning that the crime in Las Vegas is not simply a matter of statistics. It is the most visible symptom of a profound and catastrophic social breakdown. Communities that were once bound together by the promise of steady employment and shared prosperity are now fracturing under the unbearable weight of poverty. Longtime residents speak of neighbors disappearing overnight, of families, people fleeing their apartments. Entire blocks that once pulsed with life now stand as silent concrete graveyards. This terror is a plague. The locals barricade themselves indoors, tourists are canceling in droves, and small businesses are being bled dry with every passing day. All the while, a poison of rumor and unverified horror stories spreads like a contagion. Tales of sprawling tent cities that have become open-air drug bazaars and violent breeding grounds are terrorizing everyone, whether they're true or not. For a city already fighting for its soul, the perception of chaos is a death sentence in itself, and the city's response? A pathetic, performative show of force with more police patrols and security checkpoints. But these are just flimsy bandages on a festering mortal wound. The real disease is a catastrophic collapse of trust. the trust between citizens and the city that has abandoned them. The trust between tourists and the glittering lie they were sold. The trust between corporations and the very workers they exploited for obscene profits. When trust is annihilated, fear becomes king. And in the Las Vegas pressure cooker, fear spreads with terrifying speed. Every blood-soaked headline about another stabbing, every viral video of a brawl erupting on Fremont Street, every tourist's online warning of the lurking danger, it's another hammer blow to the fragile glass fantasy that kept Sin City breathing for decades. We are now caught in a horrifyingly predictable death spiral. Desperation breeds chaos. Chaos terrifies the tourists. The tourists flee, and the jobs vanish into thin air. Without jobs, the desperation becomes absolute. With every single rotation, the spiral tightens its grip, dragging Las Vegas deeper into an inescapable abyss. What was sold as a paradise of entertainment is now teetering on the brink of becoming a grim, cautionary tale for the entire world. A city where glamour has been suffocated by fear, where the night itself feels menacing, even under the glare of a million neon lights. If Las Vegas, the city that boasted it never sleeps, is now locked in a losing battle just to keep its own streets from descending into anarchy, what hope is there for any other community in America? The question is no longer whether Vegas can survive. The question is whether the American dream itself can survive in a place where despair has already seized control and rewritten all the rules. When you hear insiders and analysts whispering that Las Vegas is becoming the Detroit of the West, don't dismiss it as a cheap shot. It is a bone-chilling prophecy. Detroit was once the crown jewel of American industry, the planet's undisputed automotive capital. At its zenith in the mid-20th century, the city was home to nearly 1.88 million people, a global monument to prosperity. But Detroit made a fatal error, building its entire empire on a single pillar, the auto industry. And when that pillar crumbled under the crushing weight of globalization, soulless automation, and catastrophic mismanagement, the city lost far more than just jobs. It lost its very soul. By 2020, Detroit's population had catastrophically hemorrhaged by over 60%, leaving behind a post-apocalyptic landscape of abandoned homes, skeletal factories, and a toxic reputation for despair that has taken decades to even begin to scrub away. Las Vegas now stands on the edge of that very same cliff. Its single fragile pillar isn't cars, it's tourism and spectacle. Almost every single business in this valley, from the diners to the taxi cabs, from the retail outlets to the housing market, is utterly dependent on the constant rhythmic pulse of visitors pouring into its casinos. And according to the US Census Bureau, that pulse is weakening. The median income for the very service workers who are the backbone of this city plummeted by nearly 6% between 2021 and 2024. For a population that survives on each shift, each tip, and each grueling hour of overtime, that number isn't a statistic. It's a knife twisting in the gut of their day-to-day survival. The incredible risk is now undeniable. When a city gambles its entire existence on one industry, the slightest downturn can trigger an unstoppable landslide. Empty casinos are not just about lost wages. They mean silent taxi stands at the airport, empty stools in late-night diners, and dead cash registers in local shops. Every single layer of the economy is interconnected, and they are all falling at once. Suddenly, the foundation they swore was solid as rock is revealed to be as fragile as shattered glass. The warning signs are screaming at us. Streets that once roared with nightlife now whisper with an eerie, disturbing quiet. Entire neighborhoods, once thriving on the lifeblood of casino paychecks, are now in a desperate fight to keep their grocery stores from closing and their schools from shutting down. For the people trapped here, this comparison to Detroit isn't about economics. It's about their very identity. Detroit was the Motor City, a name that became a tombstone, a tragic monument to a past that was gone forever. Will Las Vegas suffer the same grim fate? Will its famous moniker, Sin City, be remembered only as a hollow, mocking echo of neon dreams that went dark? And yet, in the suffocating gloom, there are desperate whispers of hope. A few corporate behemoths are attempting to rewrite this city's tragic story by planting the seeds of new industries in the Nevada desert. Amazon has expanded its colossal logistics network here, dangling the promise of thousands of warehouse and distribution jobs. In a shocking twist of irony, Tesla's gigafactory near Reno is carving a clean energy oasis out of the Nevada desert, hinting at a tech corridor that could rise from the dust of a dying dream. But make no mistake, these projects are a drop in the ocean compared to the billions raked in by casinos. They're a faint glimmer of a future where Las Vegas isn't shackled to the whims of a single roll of the dice. The terrifying challenge is whether this city will finally heed Detroit's catastrophic lesson before it's too late. Detroit willfully ignored its addiction to a single industry until the entire metropolis had rotted from within. Las Vegas still has a window to pivot, but that window is slamming shut with every soul-crushing layoff, every shuttered business, every dream abandoned in the desert sun. If a real, diversified economy doesn't take root right now, the Strip's neon will become a grotesque mask, a garish glow over a city that has been completely hollowed out. The question is no longer whether Las Vegas is vulnerable. That's a pathetic understatement. The real question is whether it possesses the guts to tear itself down and rebuild before this death spiral becomes irreversible. Because if a city engineered to defy the very desert can be brought to its knees by its own fatally one-dimensional model, then the moniker Detroit of the West will cease to be a warning. It will be a grim, undeniable reality. The question haunting Las Vegas today isn't just about survival. It's a desperate, frantic battle for reinvention. Can a city built entirely on the fragile pillars of tourism, casinos, and entertainment possibly diversify fast enough to escape Detroit's fate? The pathetic short-term fixes are already on full display. Some hotels, in a stunning act of desperation, have begun quietly waiving their once sacred resort fees, a charge they defended as absolutely untouchable. Others are frantically slashing room rates and throwing together package deals, trying to lure back the very middle-class tourists they so arrogantly priced out. Security patrols have been beefed up on the Strip, while city officials scramble in a pathetic attempt to control optics, hiding the homeless by shuffling their camps away from the tourist-filled hotspots. But these are nothing more than cheap band-aids on a gaping mortal wound. Temporary distractions from a city facing a full-blown structural collapse. The real painful solution lies in rebuilding the entire economic base, a truth laid bare by a damning 2023 Brookings Institution report. Nevada criminally invests less than 0.5% of its GDP in research and development, one of the most shamefully low levels in the entire nation. That horrifying statistic exposes not just a vulnerability, but a catastrophic failure of leadership. For decades, Las Vegas has coasted on its cheap image as a playground, ignoring the real assets that could save it from ruin. It has a young workforce, land that's a bargain compared to coastal cities, and a strategic choke point linking the western United States to Mexico and Asia. All squandered. A few companies, at least, have noticed the potential the city's own leaders seem blind to. Google just announced expansions to its Nevada data centers. They're promising thousands of high-tech jobs that could finally anchor the state's future in something real, not just luck. Amazon's logistics hubs are scaling up, offering a lifeline of employment that doesn't depend on the turn of a card or the spin of a wheel. And beyond the warehouses and servers lies the most outrageous failure of all: its untapped potential for renewable energy, baking under that vast open desert and its relentless sun. It is an absolute scandal that Nevada isn't already a global leader in solar power production, fueling not only its own needs, but exporting power to other states. At the ground level, the city's leadership must confront the housing crisis with the same urgency as its economic reform. The housing first approach, which gives people shelter before demanding they fix their lives, isn't some radical idea. It's a proven strategy that worked in cities like Salt Lake City, which saw a dramatic, almost unbelievable reduction in its homeless population by simply doing the right thing. If Las Vegas would just embrace similar initiatives, partner with private developers, and use its vast tracts of unused land and public-private funds, it could stop thousands more of its own workers from spiraling into the nightmare of tents and utter despair. But reinvention demands more than just concrete and steel. It demands vision. For far too long, Las Vegas has sold itself as a cheap illusion, a fantasy land where reality could be suspended. But that illusion is shattered, and it's no longer enough. To truly save itself, the city must broadcast a radically new message to the world. Las Vegas is not just about gambling anymore. It is about innovation. It is about resilience. And it is about a last chance at real opportunity. That means a painful, brutal shift from roulette tables to research labs, from slot machines to startups, from the hollow neon illusions to sustainable industries that can actually carry this city into the next century. But the terrifying danger is that cities that have grown fat and comfortable in their identity are tragically slow to change. Detroit clung to its cars until the factories were nothing but silent tombs. Will Las Vegas cling to its casinos until the last neon sign flickers and dies? The pieces for its salvation are right there on the table. Technology, logistics, renewable energy, housing reform? But the city must now make a choice. Will it finally stop gambling with its own survival? Or will it keep playing the same rigged game it is destined to lose? For Las Vegas, the game is no longer about winning. It's about not being wiped off the map. Reinvention is not a choice. It's a desperate fight for survival as it panders to the super rich while its middle class is left to break. Or it could forge a foundation resilient enough to weather the next storm. Because if it fails, the chilling title Detroit of the West will no longer be a warning. It will be a prophecy tragically fulfilled. Las Vegas has always peddled the seductive myth of a city of second chances, a fantasy where fortunes were made overnight and ruin was just one spin away from redemption. But in 2025, that glittering illusion has been shattered. The new reality is a grim landscape of cavernous, empty casinos, shuttered hotels, and a staggering 4,300 jobs that have vanished into thin air. And a soul-crushing count of nearly 8,000 people have been violently forced into homelessness. No longer just a statistic. They are the undeniable, brutal truth of a city that once arrogantly branded itself untouchable. This nightmare spiral is about so much more than dollars lost on a gaming table. It's about the families utterly abandoned, the communities unraveling at the seams. It's about the creeping, terrifying fear that America's capital of entertainment has become its most dire cautionary tale. And this comparison to Detroit is far more than a simple metaphor. It is a blaring 5-alarm warning. A city that stakes its entire existence on a single industry is always just one downturn away from absolute disaster. Detroit failed to diversify until it was far too late. It left behind a wasteland of ruins where opportunity once thrived. Las Vegas still has a chance, a fleeting window, but only if it dares to make a radical pivot, investing in technology, logistics, and renewable energy. And most critically, in affordable housing, to build a foundation stronger than the fragile illusions of neon can ever provide. The story of Las Vegas is not yet written in stone. Much like New York in the 1970s, that city clawed its way back from the precipice of bankruptcy. Vegas may yet find a way to rewrite its own ending, but make no mistake, the clock is ticking relentlessly. Will this city become America's next great comeback story? Or will it be remembered as another monument to a spectacular dream that collapsed under the weight of its own hubris? That answer depends not only on the choices Vegas makes, but on how this nation responds to the profound, alarming cracks now visible in one of its most legendary cities. Because if this so-called paradise in the desert can fall, the truly terrifying question becomes, whose American dream is next to fade into oblivion?